I am Allison Lucas from MillerKnoll. Who here knows MillerKnoll? Anyone? Oh, good. Okay, because I'm like, okay, it was Herman Miller. We bought Knoll. Like now it's MillerKnoll, and no one knows our name. No one knows who we are. I think the guy at the front was like, "Is Miller coming?" I'm like, "That's our company." So MillerKnoll, we make furniture. And so this is the session on navigating a merger, supply chain disruptions, and a pandemic. And how did we wrap our arms around all of those issues using data and analytics? All right, so who am I? I am the Operations Business Intelligence Manager for MillerKnoll. What does that mean? We are a business intelligence, embedded business intelligence team. We solely have subject matter expertise, well, not solely, but our subject matter expertise is in operations, which I think is really helpful because we can deliver things a lot faster because we know our business. We don't have to learn the terms every time we have a new project coming up, things like that. It is a global role as we are a global company. Basically our goal as a team is to provide self-service analytics, get people, like I said, the data in their hands when they need it, at the point that they need it, and how they need it to be presented. Our stack, we use Alteryx for ETL, Tableau for data visualization, Snowflake for our data lake. I use a lot of Power Automate just to kind of continue automation across different platforms, and SharePoint for a lot of like end user interface type of things, bringing in information from the end user to ingest into our data workflows. Let's see, I was a vice president at Goldman Sachs for 10 years before I came to MillerKnoll, Herman Miller, and then MillerKnoll 6.5 years ago, and before that I had jobs that don't really pertain to this industry. Bachelor's in journalism from Indiana University. It actually does make sense. If we talk about data literacy and being able to think about data in a way and explain it to end users and show it to them and present it to them in a format that makes sense, right? You're telling a story. And I have a master's in information systems from DePaul University in Chicago. I put barrier breaker on there because as a female, I've been in technology practically my whole career. I was walking the trading pits in Chicago, the only female there, and that was not pleasant, let me tell you. And now I'm in an operations manufacturing role, which is also mostly male dominated in technology, and so really big advocate for women in tech, women in STEM. I see my audience is mostly men, but hey, we're here too. I am a mom. I have 2 kids, Addie and Jack. She's 7, he's 9. They keep me busy. And I am a very amateur watercolor artist. That's what keeps me sane. So that's who I am. Who is MillerKnoll? So MillerKnoll is a collective of dynamic brands that comes together to design the world we live in. So these are some of our brands. Hopefully you've heard of some of them. Herman Miller, Knoll. It's all furniture, textiles, from residential to office space. Here are some of the iconic products that we create. Maybe you guys sit in the Aeron tax chair at your office if you go to an office. And if you are at home, maybe you bought one for your house. It is probably the #1 selling task chair in that space. The Eames lounge chair and ottoman, what every design fanatic, mid-century design fanatic, covets. Also with Knoll's womb chair and ottoman, so hopefully maybe that kind of rings some bells as far as who we are. Okay, so a merger, a pandemic, and a supply chain. Walk into a bar. I was hoping for a bigger laugh, but thanks. Okay, so yeah, what a perfect storm, wasn't it? 2020, COVID-19 hits. I remember that. Who remembers the date? I'm like March 13th. We were sent home from work, never to return. Not true, but not to return for quite a long time. Doing business as we know it completely shifted. Kids were in the background. You're trying to teach them mathematics or reading or whatever while you're trying to have a conference call. And I do have one funny story. My son had, we're all getting used to like Teams or Zoom or whatever, and my son had that it's like this putty that you can like push your finger into and it makes a flatulence sound. And as I'm on like a conference call with VPs and whatever, and he just walks in the room, like just making the noises, and I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, maybe some of you have some similar stories, I guess. 2021, another great year. Global supply chain crisis due to the pandemic, the surge in PPE needs, the surge in medical equipment needs, the invasion of Ukraine, you know, like containers stuck in ports, not having the shipyards have enough resources to get the containers out. You know, a lot of economists actually point to lean manufacturing principles as a major source of the supply chain disruptions. And guess what? We're a lean manufacturing company. So what that means is just-in-time manufacturing, basically that you're not going to you're not going to receive materials, you're not going to really plan your capacity and your resources until the exact time that that product needs to be produced. So it's all very, very well timed, requires a lot of forecasting, a lot of insight of where orders are coming in, when they need to get to the customer, et cetera. So what it doesn't do well is react to shifts in demand. And my goodness, did we see that in the pandemic, right? Everyone's at home. Now everyone needs people, you know, needs products shipped to their home. And, you know, for us, our retail business just skyrocketed because everyone's sitting in their home and they're looking at it and like, you know what, I'm going to change my furniture. I'm going to change my carpet. I'm going to change this, whatever. So, you know, everything, that skyrocketed, and then our suppliers couldn't meet our demands and our needs. And yeah, quite affected, had quite the backlog. You know, and on top of that, we're like, hey, great time to buy a company, right? Let's merge with another company. So really that doubled the size of Herman Miller. And you know, that was even before, that was in July of 2021. So that was before we even had like a return to work, right? So it was a challenging time. With that merger, we have to answer to Wall Street, right? So what does Wall Street want from our merger? They want to see economies of scale. They want to see similar products from similar supply bases. They want us to see us take advantage of that in terms of pricing, in terms of supplier leverage, negotiation, things like that. We want to standardize materials across our products so that we can, again, leverage, you know, our portfolio and our spend with suppliers to get better pricing, better discounts, and, you know, better service. And we also look to create manufacturing centers of excellence. So now that we have all these new manufacturing sites, well, maybe this plant does better at, you know, producing wood product, and this plant is excellent at producing metal components. And so shifting around our operations to those different plants. But before you do that, you kind of need to analyze the data to see where it makes sense, right? Where are your suppliers based? Are you going to put a wood plant somewhere where there's no wood suppliers to be bringing you product? No. So those were some things that Wall Street was looking for. We had a goal, which this is public, of achieving a synergy savings from the merger of $120 million in 3 years. Awesome. How are we going to do that? You got to be fast. So first, I will explain what our technology stack is. So, like, I wish I had one of those like long pointer things, you know, that they use. Oh, red button. Here we go. Okay, my cats would love this. So, all right, so we have obviously disparate data sources and systems. Salesforce is our CRM. People still do things in Excel and create things in Excel. We have Oracle databases, SQL databases, ERP systems. The ERP systems between the two companies were not the same, et cetera. We use an ETL tool to ingest that data. Couple of different ways that we do this. We have a separate data and analytics team that is focused more firm-wide, that has less of the deep subject matter expertise as my team does in operations. They use Matillion mainly for ingesting data from these separate sources, putting a semantic layer on top of it, and then putting it into Snowflake so that we can ingest it from Snowflake and do what we want with it. My team actually uses Alteryx to connect to like our Oracle and our SQL databases and merge data sets, transform data sets, pull them together in meaningful ways, in clean ways, in efficient ways. Then we put those into Snowflake, and Snowflake actually then, oh, that's all blurry. Snowflake feeds our data visualization, which is Tableau across our company. Salesforce, we embed a lot of Tableau dashboards in Salesforce as well, so they kind of have one-stop shopping when our sales associates are in Salesforce. So that's what we call the SALT stack. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but SALT stack stands for Snowflake, Alteryx, and Tableau. Any questions on that? Well, I don't want to breeze through that. Does anyone have similar technologies that you use? This guy does. Thank you. Awesome. Good. I hope I'm helpful. So let's see. What do we like about Snowflake? It's very fast. We do some in-database stuff within Alteryx, pulling from Snowflake, and Snowflake is doing all the churning to give us, just the data that we need in the way that we need it while it's running through the workflow. That helps a lot with efficiency. It does encourage self-service. It's pretty easy interface, SQL command line based. So, not very data savvy users can go in there and find data. Eventually, we want our North Star is to create kind of like a data app store using Snowflake. So controlling what data lives in there, controlling what we're showing to the end users so that if they want to look at order data, they're going to see exactly the order data and exactly the formats and exactly the same columns. That maybe it came from 14 different sources, but we're going to know that that's exactly the data that we want to show them. And let's see, what else? I think that's mainly it. So who here understands what Alteryx is? Okay, and you're using it, or you just know what it is, or essentially it's an ETL tool. That you can bring data in. It's a visual GUI-based tool software that you can pull down different tools to do different things to the data. So like your joins, you can filter out data, you can put formulas on top of data, and you kind of create this whole workflow of the steps that the data goes through at every point in time. And then you can create the output to go with its emailed report, or output to Snowflake, or output to Tableau, or ClickSense, I think you can as well, and other formats you want for output. But essentially, you can also schedule those workflows to run automatically. So what we do with a lot of our stuff is it's hands-off. Once we create it, it's hands-off. Once we pull the data together in Alteryx, we schedule a workflow to run, every hour, every Monday, every day at 6:30 in the morning, things like that, and then it automatically feeds Tableau, and it automatically updates Snowflake, automatically feeds Tableau. End users are getting the fresh data when they want it in the format that they want it in. All right, so you can see hopefully that how Alteryx, Snowflake, and Tableau help us to create a really dynamic end-to-end solution that we can automate. So back to what did we have to do to achieve those synergy savings, specifically in supply chain when there's a global supply chain crisis and a merger. Reliability, in this case, is the name of the game. Does anyone know what reliability is? Great. That's a no. So lots of different definitions, but essentially it's how reliable are you to ... Are you on time to the customer? When a customer wants an order at a certain time, and this is really important in office spaces when they're doing new builds or planning new layouts, and the furniture has to go in at a certain time, right? So it's very important to meet that customer requested ship date. So how reliable are you in meeting that? What's your percentage? Are you meeting it 99% of the time or 50% of the time? And when you've got a supply chain crisis, you're meeting it 50% of the time, let's be honest. So I'll focus on that right now. We need to understand, in the supply chain crisis, we created basically, or it created for us, a huge order backlog. Like I said, lean manufacturing and shifts in demand don't really work well together. So what were we going to do with the order backlog? We needed to understand, what are we behind on? How far are we behind on it? How long will it take for us to catch up? Who is causing this delay? Or what is causing this delay? Really important, how much revenue is tied up in that backlog? If I'm not delivering an order to a customer, I'm not invoicing the customer for that revenue. I need that revenue. So which orders are we going to focus on to speed up, right? And then what future orders are being planned late that we already know they're going to be late based on the fact that we can't meet resource demands, or we don't have the materials, or supplier isn't able to deliver important materials. So what we did with this one was we had a ton different data sources, ERP systems, order systems, order entry system, order to cash systems, invoicing systems, et cetera. Sales order information, supplier information, supplier forecasting and demand information, and supply chain planning, that system as well. And we created 12 different workflows to give us our data set. I forget how many actual tables they created. I'm guessing like 8-ish, and put them in one data warehouse, Snowflake, and then created one dashboard to be able to show our manufacturing VPs, work team leaders, production planners, where exactly things stood. So there's 6 tabs, and everyone wants to see dashboards when they come to these things. It's not incredibly pretty, and I'll get to that, but pointer. So I've whited out some of the proprietary information, but essentially here you can see this is one of our plants, and you can see that in the future this is how many orders we're expecting and where our capacities are. So on this date we're expecting 123 orders are planning late, and then our capacity is, I don't know what that number is. So we can see, like, out in the future, okay, it's going to look, pretty good through July, but then August is looking pretty bad. What's going on in August and September that are causing us issues? We can see down here, expected late by part, bringing that part information in, that there may be certain parts that are causing the delays in these orders. So if we know what the part is, who the supplier is, we can go to the supplier. We can work with them. We can work with their tier 2 supplier. We can figure out where the issues are, and then get ahead of them. So this has been a really important page on that dashboard for our manufacturing personnel to get out of our backlog. And then, of course, we need to know what our backlog looks like. We need to know, is it mainly, over here is, where is this guy? This is like a materials shortage versus capacity issues, right? So we can see, okay, largely the issue is material. We can see for each of our plants kind of, what does it say? The total backlog. This is more recent, so like I said, we're getting a lot better at this, but before you wouldn't want to have seen all these numbers. By resource, we could see which line is having an issue, how many late quantities, late orders are are coming off of each line, for example, and is that a capacity issue or is that a material issue? And then we can go into the detail down here to see, okay, so it's a capacity issue, and it's this supplier, it's a material shortage for this particular part. How many is it? And we can see, scroll and look through what are the heavy hitters? What do we need to go after? What are the big orders that are really being delayed by this one part or there's one piece? And can we work to get that order fixed, or get that supply chain issue fixed in order to get that order out, in order to get the revenue, in order to pay our employees and all that good stuff. And Wall Street. Another thing we looked at was, where is my order, right? So on the production floor, we have we firm out orders 3 to 5 days ahead. So firming out an order means that we're not going to promise that we're going to make it until about 3 to 5 days ahead, and then we're going to plan it in that time frame. And before, it was that, so this is, to the customer, did my order get shipped when we said we were going to ship it? Are you going to receive it when we said you're going to receive it? So the process around this before was that they would get an emailed report from like Business Objects or something once daily in the morning. Someone would then take that report, the Excel spreadsheet, throw it into another Excel spreadsheet that had macros, run a macro. They would put in different comments as to why things were late. Was it a supplier issue? Is manufacturing behind? Things like that. And we're all human, right? So it's supplier spelled with one P, or issue, spelled with one S, or whatever. And so your data is all messed up because you've got people actually entering that data in there, and you're not able to bring it together. You're not able to, fully see like, okay, here are all of my supplier issues. No, because you've got supplier 1P issues, supplier 3P's issues, things like that, right? And so this was only happening once a day. So what we did was we connected directly to the data source at the ERP that would produce basically the same data that was in this business objects report. We took that and we ran it through an Alteryx workflow where we would be able to see, okay, so what's new that's late now based on what we've planned. And we put that into a SharePoint site. We had two different lists. We had today's list and we had a supplier late list. This is all in the present. So the today's list would show us, what's here that is manufacturing behind or some other issue other than a supplier. And then a supplier late list, we'd be able to focus just on the supplier issues. So what it would do would bring the data in, copy it to the SharePoint site, and then our users would go in on SharePoint and we would hard code the reasons so that all of that data was nice and the same, and we could group it and look at it and analyze it. It would move anything from that list that said supplier late to the supplier late list, so then they could just focus on that. And then this happened every 2 hours, that it would come in and refresh all of the information so that the people on the floor, the production planners, the material planners, could really identify what was going wrong with the orders that were supposed to be built in the next few days and get after it. Then overnight, it used to be that they had someone that would take about 3 to 5 hours every night on third shift, take the data from that original Excel workbook, and swivel chair copy it into our logistics system. And when I heard that, my head exploded. So we then used Alteryx again to pull the data from the SharePoint site, put it in the correct format, clean it up however it needed to be cleaned up, and then automatically load it into our logistics system every night. And so that's saving one person 25 hours a week that they can then just focus on the issues and correcting the issues rather than typing from one system to another. Okay, so another supply chain challenge. Where is my order? Did our supplier deliver our materials when they said they would? As I've been saying a lot, if we don't get the materials from the supplier to make the product, we're not going to be able to ship the product, right? This has a lot to do with the merger as well. So our supply management team, so these are the teams that work with the suppliers to figure out what their issues are. If there's trending issues, get ahead of them. They work with them on pricing. They work with them on bulk orders, things like that. Our teams between Herman Miller and Knoll merged almost immediately after the merger, which is great because none of our systems were merged. We weren't able to bring the data together to make sense at that point. And we didn't even know what their data looked like, how aligned it would have been with our data. Herman Miller was way ahead on all of our processes in this space, so a lot of the Knoll data kind of had to come in and align with the Herman Miller data. These teams needed to analyze spend to see where the opportunities were with our suppliers, where we had shared suppliers, for example. They also needed to analyze quality and delivery, so the quality of the material that they're bringing in, and are they delivering it on time? Obviously, both of these issues cause disruption in the supply chain. So, let's see. that created a challenge. We had to figure out how to get over to Knoll. We had to figure out how to get into their system and get to their data. They were on a VPN. And one of the interesting things, well, not interesting, but if you've worked with VPNs in 2 different companies before, when you're pulling data, if I'm on the Knoll VPN, I can't pull data from my Herman Miller VPN or my Herman Miller data sources. So we had to figure out a way to get the data from Knoll, merge it with Herman Miller data, and produce these reports and these dashboards in a timely fashion. We had to also be able to get the data from Knoll and look at it to understand what were we dealing with, and we found that we use supplier number for our primary key, so everything connects back to a supplier number. They had, I think one of their suppliers had 16 different numbers associated with it. So they at least had 2, at the very least there were 2 supplier numbers because it came from 2 different systems, their ERP system and I think their order entry system. So I'm banging my head against a wall, as you can imagine, as I'm starting to see this. Also, they categorize their data, their supplier data differently than Herman Miller does. I actually think they did it right, but Herman Miller looks at a supplier and says, you're a plastic supplier, you're a metal supplier. Knoll actually looks at what they're supplying and say, oh, that part, that's a metal part, and that's a plastic part. But we had to reconcile that because it wasn't going to work. So really fun challenge and something that they wanted quickly because, as you can imagine, a lot of those synergy savings that we promised Wall Street, a bulk of them were in this supply management area. So what did we do? What I did was I wrote some VPN connect and disconnect scripts. And in Alteryx, there's a way that you can have events run before and after a workflow. So I can say, run this script before the workflow starts. Connect to Knoll's VPN before the workflow starts. Then once it's connected, then pull the data from Knoll. After the workflow has pulled the data, then I want you to disconnect from the VPN because I can't have conflicting VPNs because I'm going to need to pull data from Herman Miller as well. So we did that, and that kind of solved that problem. So then we were able to get Knoll's data, and we were able to review the current state of it and identify those quality issues, the misspellings, no primary key. We used Alteryx then to create probably have that in the wrong order, but data masters, right? So bringing Knoll's information in, figuring out how are we going to take 16 supplier numbers and make sure that they're all going to point to the same supplier, right? So we created a supplier data master, and then we created a semantic layer and basically another master that would bring all of the data together and in alignment. So if they call an order number or a production order number, they call it a PO number, and Herman Miller calls it prod or num or something like that. We brought it into the semantic layer so that we created the semantic layer so that everything would line up correctly in between the 2 data sets, so it became usable. And since we already had the Tableau dashboards created. So for the Miller side, so once we got the Knoll data aligned, then it just worked with the dashboards that are already been created. So that was another way we were able to move faster, and a lot of that is really due to the use of Alteryx. Everyone wants to see dashboards, right? So this is a page that, and again, I had to white out information, but this is a page that our supply management teams can look and see where were the issues last week that were caused by our supplier. Were they quality issues? Were they delivery issues? Which suppliers were causing it? So we can see, this is what happened last week. You can barely see the green, but each supplier has a goal that they need to meet so that they can't go above so many hits of delivery hits, so many hits of quality hits, because if they go above that, then it's really going to disrupt us. So that's the different coloring there. Then we can see what are the quantities from each of these suppliers across the last few weeks. Is this getting really, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Are we consistently seeing things? That's also the frequency over here. How often are they having quality issues? This can all point out to a supply management team to be able to go to a supplier and help them fix the issues or identify the issues, but also on the flip side, identify, okay, what orders is that going to affect? How much revenue is that going to affect? Which are the, we can't solve all the issues all the time, so which ones are we going to focus on? And then down here, I just have the details of, it's this supplier, it was this particular item, it was a delivery issue or a quality issue, this was the quantity that it caused. So you can start to see, you get more in the details and you understand a little bit more about what's going on. I will say one thing about my dashboards, and I know that they're kind of tabular. And from my experience, I think this team started really we started with ClickSense, we moved to Tableau as a firm about 5-ish years ago. And so that was coming from, they were transitioning off of creating Excel reports themselves, right? So they're used to seeing output in Excel. They're used to seeing, how Excel, puts things in tabular format and, not too pretty graphs. They don't, Excel sucks at graphs. So it's been kind of an evolution, I would say, as far as the users wrapping their head around, what a dashboard can do, but also like what kinds of graphs and charts that they should see and should be looking at in order to point out, issues quickly. And in my opinion, that's part of the job of the business intelligence team or the data and analytics team that understands what a software like Tableau can do, and to be able to show them and wrap their head around it instead of, they've got this Excel spreadsheet and they're like, here, put this on a Tableau dashboard so I can go on the web and see it, right? It's like, well, what if we looked at this calculation a little bit differently? We made a pie chart. Wouldn't you want to see the trends dating backwards, or wouldn't you want to see the frequency trend? How often is this happening? Is this a problem supplier in general? How much revenue does this supplier affect when they mess up? So I do think it's an evolution of getting them away from the tabular. Everyone still wants to see details. Everyone still wants access to the underlying data to be able to download it and then manipulate it the way they want to. But it really is our job as the business intelligence team to try to get ahead of that, to try to create the content so they don't have to download and manipulate the way they want it to. Give it to them in that format. But we're not quite there yet. It's an evolution. Does anyone else have that same problem with your end users at all? Any good tips, tactics? I guess as the speaker, I should be offering them, right? I think I think it really involves sitting down and understanding the requirements. The easiest thing to do is just to take something that's already been done and transform it in using our tools, right? But the more difficult thing to do is to really understand what they're trying to achieve, what questions are they trying to answer with this data, what problems do they need to solve, and what information do they need to solve it. So really sitting down and digging into the requirements, not just sort of being like an order taker and say, okay, cool, that's what you want, I'll have it to you in 2 weeks, no questions asked. Really try, and I guess I also think that being a business embedded intelligence team helps with that, because you understand the context a lot more than a generalized data analytics intelligence team, because you're also seeing, okay, well, over in manufacturing, they are really concerned with this, and that sounds like it could be a problem for you, or maybe you're causing that problem, so maybe that's something that you might want to build into, we might want to build into a dashboard for you so that you can get ahead of that problem, so manufacturing doesn't have to deal with it, and it's kind of you're getting ahead of it. So I would say really digging deep into the requirements, and I'd say definitely the data. The data is the longest tent pole. You've got to get good data. You've got to get clean data. It has to, it has to be in a format that is efficient to get at. Nobody wants to sit and load a Tableau dashboard for 5 minutes before they see something, right? So that's why our team does a lot with Alteryx before it goes into Snowflake, and then because it really gets it into the most pared down, succinct version that we need to support a dashboard. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't care. That's how we do it. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to say. Oh, yay, questions, yes.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a question. So you mentioned some self-service analytics.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you're probably hard-pressed to be able to do that because this is big data sets, very specific to your business unit. Have you had any successes or attempts to get more of the business unit folks, which you serve as you're specifically tied to the business unit?
Yep. So the question is, have we had any good attempts at providing self-service analytics? No. I would say that so with the merger, they created a pillar of data and analytics within operations. It didn't really exist before. We were all just sort of doing it in pockets. So they created an actual pillar inside of a larger operations technology group, and that's what I lead. And I would say, like our supply management, logistics teams were pretty used to our stack and what we're able to do, but our manufacturing teams, no idea that we could even do any of this stuff. So we are like heroes to them right now, which is so much fun. So I would say it's still in that. Apparently I've used evolution a lot as a word, but it's still in that evolution where they're still wrapping their heads around the fact that it can be done, that hours upon hours of their manual work, sifting through data, being in Excel, can be eliminated so they can actually focus on their jobs, and how it can be automated. So it's really like part of my strategy is to go out to the businesses and demonstrate what we can do so they can start the wheels turning. And right now there's a lot of wheels turning, and I think it's starting to introduce them slowly to the most critical things that they need, like that it's an ICO process of production. Where is my order? How late is it going to be? Really critical for the manufacturing floor. So introducing them to those capabilities first, and then kind of seeing, okay, so what's the next step? What are the next steps that we can do to if either provide you the data in the way that you want to see it. I mean, that I guess is self-service as well, right? Really getting at those requirements. Or start thinking more about like data app stores. I mean, we've got business objects, but don't get me started there. We're not quite there yet. I think I still have a lot of kind of data literacy to disseminate throughout our business partners first before we get there. And you saw all the tabular stuff on the dashboard. It's like we're still getting there, but yeah. Does that answer your question? I wish it actually didn't. I didn't provide you any kind of examples because we're not doing it. But we'll get there. This guy in the front.
You described descriptive analytics. Does your team also use Alteryx for predictive?
Not yet. I think that's kind of in the same line of, the question was, do we use Alteryx for predictive? Not yet. I mean, we can see, like, some of our data is somewhat, I mean, I wouldn't call it predictive, but we can see, like, what's planned out in the future. But that's actually, like, a system has already planned it, so it's not necessarily predicting what it's going to be. It is that right now. I would say that's also in our evolution, that once we get our business partners used to the fact that we have these tools that do these amazing things for them and get them the information they need when they need it, then we'll probably, like self-service, start getting them thinking about, well, what if I could see into the future? What does that look like? And I think that perhaps the way we're doing, creating very succinct, specific tables for our data in Snowflake doesn't help us, because you need a lot of data in order to perform predictions, right? So we probably need to rethink, what is the data that would make sense to bring all together in a, and have a large table of this information so that we can easily pull into that and do prediction. So yeah, we're not doing that either. Yes?
I was handed a microphone, so I guess that means I have to ask a question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
He's a plant.
You showed us a picture of a chart, a table, and you said sometimes the business user wants us to put this in Tableau, and you have to like talk them back from that ledge. Sometimes not because they want to, but because of time constraints. The analytics team, the analytics delivery team, is the one that actually needs to be brought along that journey of talking through that with the business.
100%.
And in the context of a merger, I imagine there's a lot to do. So do you have like a heuristic around when to choose those battles, or when to just give the business their table in Tableau, because you can't solve everything all the time?
Oh, you say that 5 times. I think that we have a request intake system that basically calculates a prioritization for the requests. And like I said, as people the wheels are turning, like requests are coming in left and right for, I just need this report automated, or I need a dashboard, or whatever, right? So we have a priority system, and one of our pillars is like the scalability of it. And there's also, how difficult is it going to be? How much time and resources is this project going to take? And it's not that if it takes a lot of time and resources that we say no to it, but we just have to place it, in our roadmap or on our chart of work in the correct order. So I think the prioritization and really kind of digging more in about the project and thinking more critically about what it is helps us to know, what, because we've got to it has to be a mix. It has to be a mix of those quick wins to demonstrate what we're able to do. Does this demonstrate that? And then the ones that we're gonna, maybe it's a much larger, more complex data set that we're gonna spend a lot more time on. It would really behoove us to dive deeper into the requirements, think more critically about providing, the more advanced kind of analytics or visualizations that maybe they weren't thinking about. You're analyzing your requests, right? I have built like a requirements template that I'm rolling out, and I've got a new hire that I'm going to kind of have her sit with a lot of these teams, and because she's got the time really to sit there and dig in, right, and really just draw out a lot of this information. She may not have the ability to recommend what it needs to be, but at least like she can be there, draw out the information, and we can all sit down and look at these requirements documents. That it's a template, so you're getting kind of the same, you're asking the same questions, and being able to understand, how complex is this? Because how many times have you gotten a request that is like, oh yeah, this should just take me 5 minutes, and 3 weeks later you're still working on it, right? But nobody likes to do the documentation. Nobody likes to take the time to do that. Just get it done, bring it in, put in your tool, do all the fun stuff in Alteryx and Tableau, right? But really like sitting down and weeding through those requirements and really thinking critically about it, I think can help you plan a lot better. I think it can help you figure out, when is the right time to give them, the more, white glove service of analytics versus the, sure, I'm just gonna take this and do it. Time savings is a big one too, right? How much time is this gonna save for them? If the report is gonna be what the report is gonna be, great, but it's gonna save them 10 hours a day, okay, that's a win, right? Like, let's start there. And the other thing clearly is gonna be scope and scope creep. That, let's talk in phases, right? We're gonna get you this at this point. My manager's trying to get me to do agile. I just don't think I'm that organized. But I think that can kind of help too, right? Like I think when you kind of, I don't even know, I siphon it out into little projects and things like that. But yeah, I think it's important to think in phases and really, if you have good requirements, then you can set good expectations with the client, customer, end user. Hopefully that helped. 0 minutes remaining. I hope this was helpful.